I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Operations Planning Committee to order for Thursday, March 28th. And I think we'll start with Seth this morning.
Well, the bag saga continues. We had another public hearing last night. We have 3 committees working on this. I stopped to do the numbers. John will appreciate this. And I think about a third of the representative town meeting is working on the bag ordinance between the Public Works and TGS&A.
No one's life or property is safe when the legislature's in session, something like that.
Yes, that's exactly. So, and so they continue the march, which is great. Public health and safety going along on it. And so they have to, we're at the point now where these committees have to get together and adopt a final resolution, which will be the one that comes before the RTM. So that, at the moment I'm seeing June for that, because we don't want to do it during the budget, and there's still some issues. And they have to get worked out, so I don't think they'll be ready for the April meeting of the RTM. But we will have the police contract, I think, for the next RTM meeting. And a lady, or a person, to add to the Blight Commission. And that will about do it.
Thank you very much, Seth. Just to augment a little bit, I'm hoping to hear when the RTM discusses on the floor the bag ban about raised bill 1003 that's in Hartford. It's also an act concerning the use of single-use plastic paper bags, and it seems that the ordinance, the ordinance that we're creating mirrors some aspects of this particular proposal, but not others. So I'm eager to see not only how this continues to move through the legislative process up in Hartford, certainly would hope that ultimately we end up with laws that are consistent with one another, if we end up with laws at all.
The ones that I've seen in the state are less restrictive than ours, and they don't preclude us being more restrictive.
Correct.
So far.
The committee
That's
had
today
kind of vague
at,
language, right? I mean, there was something like, I think the committee came out with something that we could have restrictions, but didn't go so far as to help us prescribe what those might be.
No.
Well, this
Not
one-
only that, but there's no fine or no fee or deposit or whatever you
Right.
want to
This
call
one
the 10-cent deal.
does not include the 10-cent
Right.
mandatory fee for paper bags.
Mhm.
But it does eliminate anything that's less than 12 mils. And it includes this language, which I'm really happy to see in the local ordinance, that there's a carve out for the stores that are less than 10,000 square feet, which I thought was great. And I think that's an enhancement, because I think we're all likely in agreement that it would be great for people to just stop using those single-use plastic bags. And I was saying to John before you guys walked in that I get hung up a little bit on the fact that we have to create laws for behaviors that people have within their own power to just stop using them. But without that, we don't want to harm our small local retailers, especially at this time in our economy. It's really not wise to do that. So the modifications, I think, are very beneficial, and I appreciate the work of the RTM on that.
They are working hard and long.
Okay, Steve, morning.
Well, wow, thank you. Good morning. First is a question, what do you want me to talk about? What does John usually talk about? I don't want to
When are these projects going to get started?
I wouldn't think for a while.
Well, that's a serious question. We're
Actually,
all
very
That's
serious.
a serious answer.
I'm not kidding.
That's a true answer.
Okay.
Do you want to start with everything that's the pending stuff?
Yes, sure.
I made a little cheat sheet. The most important thing that we did most recently working on is the revised zoning code. We hired Glenn Charler, who did the town plan and conservation development, and a redraft in the zoning code. It's really not too much of a redraft, it's more of a consolidation. For a quick example, there's a thing called Neighborhood Business East and Neighborhood Business West. They basically say the same exact thing. Now it's just going to be neighborhood business. There's a couple of tweaks in one and tweaks in the other, and they have to jive, but they're pretty much going to be the same. Relative to neighborhood business, one of the biggest changes inside that, and it might be neighborhood business, it might be called something a little bit different. One of the biggest things in there, we're going to remove a restriction or change the restriction for a number of seats in small quick service restaurants, which is a place like Roost.
Yes.
Or
Great.
Sono Bakery and some of the little ones, where
So
they're only allowed to have 8 seats. There's
give them
the
a few-
gelato place, yeah.
Give them a few more.
Yeah.
Great.
We can have a few more.
Makes sense.
The issue's got to do with parking. If everybody's full at the same exact time, is there allowed parking? But there's plenty of parking in most places in town.
So will you be mindful and have as part of your discussion the idea that we're really trying to move forward with making the town of Darien more pedestrian friendly, people walking? So it seems incongruent to tie all those kinds of restrictions to parking.
In particular, the neighborhood business districts are the ones that are more away from the city center.
Okay.
So those do have standalone parking issues. One of the neighborhood business districts is down at the end of Togany Road by 5 Mile River Road. There's no municipal parking. If you're in the CBD behind Sono Bakery, there's a municipal parking lot. If you're in Maroon Heights, you got a lot of parking. Relative to Roost in particular, they have their own private parking. So the answer to your question is yes. But if you're in the city center, and I just like calling downtown the city center, people can walk across the street and go from CVS on one side to Nero on the other side. That's what I call pedestrian friendly and walking around. But most of those little districts, you have to be a little bit more standalone. I don't think parking is going to be a major issue, but they just have to be able to prove it.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
I'd love to talk to you more about that, because Roost is a great example of a place that draws from unique populations. All the churches in the area with an overabundance of parking, for example.
Great.
There's nothing that would preclude someone from, on a Thursday, parking in St. John's church lot to use Roost, for example.
Other than maybe the schools,
Yeah.
the private nursery schools that are run during
Yeah.
those days, yeah.
The one example I'll always give you is, where I use all the time, is certain uses, in particular in life or in zoning, are supposed to have a beginning and end. The example is Equinox. If you go to Equinox, most people work out for an hour and 15 minutes. I don't work out. I don't know.
An
I've
hour and
never been
15
there.
minutes they work out?
But,
You're making us all
Wait,
feel
you
bad about
said
ourselves.
the average they work out for an hour and 15 minutes?
It's about an hour and 15 minutes, start to finish.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so,
like a class. and
Correct.
then-
and maybe a shower or something.
In Greenwich, it's the most successful Equinox in the country. People don't leave. They messed up the parking in the Greenwich.
Oh.
So the people that are members there go there in the morning and stay for like 6 hours. So the parking doesn't turn over.
Get a life, maybe?
Exactly.
Sorry.
It doesn't
They
turn
have
over.
food service there, they have enticed their customers to stay with groups of people.
It got so,
You must be very fit.
it's so bad there that they have valet parking. Okay, if you flip that over.
Only in Greenwich.
Yeah.
Right. The same thing
That's
is
funny,
similar.
actually.
It's hilarious.
It's the same thing is similar in Armonk. There's a new development in Armonk that I've worked on for a while. It could technically happen at Roost. If you went to Pure Bar and you were in Pure Bar for a class for an hour and a half, I think it's Pure Bar, it's not,
Yeah.
If you're there for an hour and a half, then you go across the street to Roost for another 45 minutes. You're there, the physical car is there too long.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And then you can go across the street and get your hair cut. You can be there all day. we're mindful of that and matters. I think it's something you can overcome. Moving on. 77 Leroy is the corner, is a 16-unit apartment building that was approved by the Stefanoni family, sold, developed. They only, they occupied 5 units, which were the affordable housing units, or the lower income affordable housing units. Those sold. The other 11, some of those are leased, some of those are not. Not the developer, the present person that controls the condominium board association has come back to the planning and zoning commission to change the resolution for the zoning. Since I've been on the commission, all the age restrictions that we put in place are 62 and over. Nationally, you're allowed to be 55 and over or 62 and over. It's interesting, Bob Maslin wanted to make sure that the Settlers Trail project was 62 and over. David Geneviese's other project that was supposed to be assisted housing for special needs people, and then also the backstop was going to be senior housing. Bob Maslin argued that to be 62 and over. Actually, I wanted Penny's to be 55, but that's a different story. Now he says that 62 and over is against some federal law, and wants to switch it to 55 and over. It's more of a it's more of a legal question. Our town council's looking at it, so that zoning code may change. To me, it was either bad lawyering by the people that put it forth the application, which would have been the Stefanonis. It would have been bad lawyering by the town if we approved it. And the other one would have been bad lawyering by Boz Maslin, who was adamant about 62 and over on Settlers Trail, and now all of a sudden he says it's against some federal law. It seems a little odd to me. My understanding that of the 11 other units in the building, I think 4 of them are rented and 7 are vacant. They say it's impeding the marketing. I've been in commercial real estate for 30 years. I can tell you what impedes marketing. It's usually price.
Price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most people do know that. A couple more quick hits. Darien Green, which is 330 Post Road, is well under construction. That's the office park that's next door to Duchess.
Right. Looks great.
The building sold, the 2 building complex sold empty.
Mhm.
We gave them any approvals that they needed to get going. The concept there is they want to make one of the buildings medical. I don't think they came back for that though, but we added a portico share to the building. There's a new leasing agent that's trying to lease it, that's leasing that project. And that's the biggest construction thing that's going on. Next door to that, John Vaccaro has another little building that was the old sewing machine factory.
Yeah.
He's full bore on that, full construction. I think they brought one tenant forth to us already, which is another fitness tenant. It's really, I was in California for Parents Weekend, and the same fitness tenant's out here. They're supposed to come here. It's, the latest and greatest fitness center. I guess they pay the rent.
There is variety.
There's a lot of
There's
them.
no variety.
So that one's full bore. But I'm going to get to the ones you want to care about. Darien self-storage, open, going. I was the first boat there because I wanted to have boats. Now there's 5 boats there. So the boat thing's going well. The parking, there's 16 parking spaces out front. Of those 16 parking spaces, it was supposed to be a quote-unquote paid commuter lot, managed by the owner of the property. There's an app-based company that came to town that wants to give you an app to use your excess parking. It's similar on meter. If you go to a lot of places now, you can pay for parking via an app on your phone versus putting 25 cents in a meter. The owner of the property may, put the management of the subleasing of that space out to that app-based company, so you can reserve a spot there and pay them through the app. And then the Hertz brothers that own it would have nothing to do with it. They would just, effectively collect 1 check versus collecting 13 checks. We don't really need to approve that. That's a private thing. That's just supposed to be more commuter parking within walking distance of the train station. The only other thing that's going on over there, they're putting solar panels on the roof of that building, so we get to lower our carbon footprint again inside Darien. I'll switch over to Corbin Drive, which people would like to know about. Corbin Drive has had a lot of meetings with the state recently. They have to get a bunch of state approvals. I think they got some state approvals already. The ones that are still on the table are the widening or narrowing of the sidewalk. And there's it next to, if you look at the building next to where you sit in the pocket park for Gopher Ice Cream, there's a little culvert thing, which is the water that comes underneath the post road. It's a drainage ditch. The plan, it goes all the way back to Old Kings Highway South. The plan is to put that thing way underground and make it a pipe, and the developer is going to pay for all that, since it's between Tibbetts Building, Corbin Drive, and the parking lot there. The state says it's a river, it's not a drainage ditch. So the EPA supposedly wants some kind of compensation for them to move a river. I don't know why.
Significant compensation.
Yep.
The state wants compensation.
Yeah, it's a fee in lieu. It's an odd concept. It's the Army Corps.
So where it comes from, I don't know. The other issue is, and I talked to the engineer about it the other day, is David Genovese, very smart person. He looks at everything.
Yeah.
He wants they design the sidewalks to be wider. If you go into 1020, the sidewalk is really wide. If you go over to Darien or Wheaton Bank, which is not down, but this sidewalk is really narrow. He wants a wider sidewalk. That means, I think, narrowing the road a little bit on the building. The state wants the road wider and the sidewalk skinnier, and he wants the sidewalk wider and the road skinnier. The reason why you narrow a road is for traffic calming, because you don't have people trying to go past you.
Right.
So there's going to be some give and take on that. I don't know where it's going to come out.
Well, and the paradox with the traffic, narrowing the road, is it also slows the traffic, makes it safer, and also speeds traffic through.
That's
It's more
the concept.
effective getting traffic moving than people going faster.
Because it's one lane.
So right, and it's people drive slower, fewer accidents, they're driving more thoughtfully, and they drive more efficiently.
Great.
Part of the problem is the road geometry there. If you think about the geometry of the road in front of 1020 Post, you have 2 travel lanes and on-street parking. But in front of David's project, you have to accommodate on one side a through traffic lane and a right-hand turn lane. So,
Good point.
and then
Right.
on-street parking on either side. So it's a little bit different.
So, I mean, it was very well designed when it was presented to us. They pushed the building back, as 1020 did. I mean, you can either push the building back or you can widen the sidewalk and squeeze the road. It was thought about well in advance. We'll see what happens. I'm not 100% sure. Just so people also know, all of these projects, absent probably federal, have to get construction financing. I don't know a lot of people that pay for cash to build these things. So everyone's going to seek construction financing too, and that takes time.
What's the first building to get built in the project?
The first building that's probably going to get built is going to be where the gas station is, all the way down Corbin Drive, on the, I'm going to say, the left side of Corbin Drive.
Okay.
Because the first big building to come down would be Bank of America building, and then there's a bunch of tenants inside. Helen Hansen is in there, right? So if you take down the gas station and Corbin Drive, then all those tenants that are on the Post Road
Right.
can move into that new building.
Got it.
And then when the new building gets built, they can all get moved back.
So is it when the gas station comes down, is it going to be one building there? Or it's
There's-
a long?
It's a long building,
Okay.
but there is also a curb cut that cuts through.
Okay.
So, because there's a culvert in the back, there was already an existing easement back behind there to get from Corbin directly into the parking lot behind 1020. And to me, whenever I want to go to 1020, come from that way, or to CVS, you have to go all the way back and around and cut through, some private office building parking lot.
Medical building, yeah.
Now, there's supposed to be a curb cut in, so there's going to be a bank branch, a building, I think a driveway, and another building.
Okay.
Those also have apartments above it. So those apartments can get leased out first. And then once that gets built, they can go on the other side. So I think the quote-unquote construction cost budgets are split between the two sides of Corbin Drive.
Couple of questions on that.
Mhm.
The east side of Corbin Drive was not in the original plan. You mentioned that there might be apartments above it.
Yep.
Are those in the overall apartment counts that I've been hearing, 130, or are those additional apartments?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember, and I hope I didn't misspeak that there are apartments on that side of the street, but I thought there was.
Okay.
But that's a good question. I don't remember.
Okay. I can follow up with Jeremy.
Yeah, because you're 100% correct. The Corbin sub-district
Yeah.
was expanded to flip across the street
Okay.
because it wasn't originally in there. And then the Tibbetts building came into play, the gas station came into play, and then what's the other building that's there? The old
Bank?
Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first place where
Oh.
the bank was.
Yeah.
And
So
to,
they-
to the best of your knowledge, does David have all the approvals of all those property owners? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all on board. There's a bunch of different property owners. I mean, I don't know if they're sales or purchases or contracts or what they are, but they have, when you look at the application, to put every single owner's name on an application, and they're all on there. But you can do a lot of stuff with options and partnerships and whatnot.
Nice.
Thank you.
Federal, I don't really have a big update on federal, which is Stop and Shop. I can tell you that Equinox was kind of sort of reskinned on the outside with a new color scheme. They're doing work on the inside to me. I've not been in it, but I know they're doing work on the inside. And then next door to that, in the parking lot between the existing Walgreens and Equinox, that's where the new Walgreens is going to go. So they've done some surveying there. So the first move that happens there is the new Walgreens would get built. Then you can take down the old Walgreens, and then you're off to the races. I was recently out in San Jose, Santa Clara, California, Santana Row, which is what they built, which what Federal built out there. That's one of their biggest famous projects. It was cranking at 10 o'clock at night. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I hope ours is not going to be big in the Santana Row, but they did a nice job out there. Palmer's, they're still moving forward. They also need to see construction financing. They've had a couple little changes. We gave them some extensions. One of the first moves there, I think, is the post office is moving to where Infinity Fitness is, which is underneath the Palmer store. That's a big space that's always been vacant for a long time. I think there's Infinity Fitness under there, and then physical therapy,
Right.
and there's room for the post office. That's where the post office is supposed to go.
Huh.
Most of those that have a tendency to move or are moving. Like Heights Pizza's under construction over Planet
Right.
Pizza, and they'll eventually move. I have not heard much from them, but they did get an extension.
Have you heard any news about Jimmy's Southside?
Oh, right.
When they're moving now,
When or where?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
No.
that's a good question.
One of those, there's a lot of buildings being built so they can move to a new building, but it depends on how long they're going to be closed.
Yeah, okay.
A couple other small things, Tokenique Road, we have two office buildings on that street because of the zoning change, which is 100 and 120 Tokenique Road. Those buildings are in that target zone. 100 has been empty for a few years now, and 120, the company that's a tenant in there got sold, and that's also owner occupied. The Boy Scout cabin is another one. That was fully approved. At the last minute, they put in a lawsuit because they didn't like what we did with the tag sale provisions and how it goes into the future because it might affect their funding.
The neighbors who put in the lawsuit?
The Boy Scouts did.
Oh, okay.
The Boy Scout Foundation. Because long story short, if I'm running out of time, just tell me, because I'm not watching the clock, you are, plus you're in charge. The Boy Scouts in 19-something, 80-something, got approved for a one-week tag sale. The tag sale has morphed into a longer tag sale. Tag sale is only really one day, but the setup takes a long time.
Right.
So now I think it got up to 6 weeks. I think we truncated it down to 5, going down to 3, because their footprint got bigger. So they have more space to put stuff, and they're more efficient. This year's tag sale will go on as planned. I think we did cut off a week. I think it might have been either a week on either end, or it might be just a week total. Hopefully it goes better this year. I mean, it always goes good, but hopefully they can manage it better this year. After this year's tag sale, and I'm pretty sure the house is occupied by somebody at Old Town Homes, got moved over. They
Yes.
bought the house next door. After this year's tag sale, I guess after that person vacates, that house is supposed to get knocked down, then they can expand the quote-unquote parking lot bigger. So next year's tag sale is going to include the dirt from the house that they bought that got knocked down. So that gets truncated even smaller, and then after that happens, then they knock down the building. They're also out seeking financing or donations
Yeah.
to pay for that. Road widening, maybe Jamie, I'd love you to touch on this later, the road widening at Norotan Avenue and West Avenue.
Sure.
What's going on with that project?
Yeah.
Tara, if you could tell me anything you can about the schools, if there's anything we're going to be looking at there coming down the pipe. I do know that the jogging track is on the agenda for the next 2 weeks at the high school. So we'll be looking at that. You guys approved the gift already, is that right?
No.
You didn't approve the gift, okay.
No, just the processing. We approved the applicants moving forward with the gift
Okay.
in order to make sure the other town bodies could weigh in, whether it was
Okay.
even something that we could approve. So it's on your agenda. Is it a public hearing on your agenda?
It's a public hearing because they're going through the Diller property, which has got wetlands. So I
Okay.
think EPC already looked at it, and all the other boards look at it, like EPC looks at it, and ZBA would look at it if they need to, and then we were the last person to approve it.
So when I spoke with John, just to make sure we're clear, because we have had some neighbors at the high school ask,
Mhm.
will the neighbors that are within the appropriate,
They get
and whatever,
notified.
they get notified, so they'll have a chance to
Mhm.
speak at the public
I mean, neighbors that live 3 miles away from the site will get notified.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure, because they've been asking, well, when's the public hearing? And I don't think it's in our venue, I actually think it's in
Yeah,
yours.
it's in
So
ours.
as long as they're notified, then.
Yes,
okay.
they're notified. And the last thing that I have on my list is, we do have 2 seats that are up for election this year. I think it's 2 Republican seats and maybe a Democratic seat. I think it's at least 3. Mr. Cini said he's not going to run for re-election, so we still have a nomination. I don't know when the RTC or the DTC get together, but we're next year, in November, there's going to be someone else on the ballot running next to Jamie on the ballot. Congratulations. That's good.
Thank you. I always appreciate your
The only last one is
updates.
Old Town Homes, but that's still.
I can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Although they were before you on Tuesday night, correct?
Correct, and the reason why they're before us is because they're moving a parking space from the left side to the right side, because the EMT building has 6 spaces. They use 2 of them. They put the 2 handicaps next door to each other. They also want to put in a portico chair, kind of sort of, on the side of the building that faces the EMT building, and they're moving dryer vents from the roof to the sides of the building, which is similar to everything else.
Mhm.
There's a couple of the garbage dump is moving, turning 180 degrees or 90 degrees. There's a couple other minor tweaks, and they were all approved on Friday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tara?
Thanks. I can be quick, I think. Steve, John mentioned Jeremy sending some information over on municipal use zoning that would affect the schools. I don't have that yet, and Jeremy could still be working on it, but I know he wanted testimony, so as soon as that can get over,
Okay.
we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
So the board's mostly, right now, at the moment, focused on budget. We had a favorable modification to our budget, which was exciting. Our healthcare numbers came in much lower than expected, with an over $500,000 savings. So our year-over-year budget is down to 2.03%. So we always love to be able, when we can, to deliver that to taxpayers. There were some questions on our tour of schools. And so, John, at some point, if we can touch base, there were a few Board of Finance members who were asking about projects based on grant acceleration. And we've identified some of those. Most would not be with the state. And it would mostly be if we wanted to accelerate any opportunities with Eversource while their grant program is still in existence. Most of ours with the state, often it depends on when a project was closed out. That's when the state considers it done. And so depending on when that line was closed out would be the useful life, even if it's actually been functioning for longer. So we don't have much with the state that would be worth bringing forward in terms of acceleration, but we'll present a list for consideration if that's really the Board of Finance's desire versus individual members, and we just wanted to be responsive to
I'd
some
love
of the
to
questions.
see the list so that we can at least
Sure.
take a look.
There was also a question on the tour of schools, Jamie, about the house behind Holmes and what to kind of do with
Yeah.
that property. So I will make sure we take it up in the coming weeks, and
Great.
we will just issue something and be clear on kind of what we'd like to do with it.
Perfect.
And then the town can make their decisions.
It's a piece of grass now, it's not a house.
Yeah.
Yes, we keep calling it the house, but you're
Okay.
right, because for
It's-
so long it was the house, we all were, it is a
It's
empty
nothing,
lot.
it's a hole.
Yes, but we no longer have someone driving through our parking lot, so that is appreciated. And that's really my update, unless anyone has any particular questions. No. Steve, sorry, you asked about school projects. Facilities has gone back, once we kind of got Oxbridge off to the building committee, we've gone back to kind of look at what would be the next school project, and as those decisions come, we will get it out to all the appropriate town bodies.
So am I correct to assume that Oxbridge is going to be coming soon, or if it gets funded or approved?
Mr. Zagrodsky?
I can talk to that.
Mr. Zagrodsky's on the building committee for Oxbridge.
Because we look forward on what's going to be big in, you know,
It's
just
2020,
keep on going.
you know.
So it's out of the school's hands now.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've actually been very good at, we've got a great group together. I think Kip and Duke, to their credit, have been working as fast as they can. But it is out of our hands for when it comes.
So we might see a school project in 2020 or something like that. Maybe. Who knows?
I'm personally hoping sooner, but you know, I will say they are diligent and there are deadlines.
We got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's a good segue. We'll ping pong across the table to John,
Sure.
and you can talk about
Okay.
Oxbridge.
So thanks. The few items on my list were continuing to work through our budget process. We had a number of topics that we covered this past Tuesday. I think we can get through all of our topics Tuesday and Thursday next week in the budget workshops we have planned. I've got a set of questions that I'll send over to you that I've collected from my board, and I will try to get that out to you end of day tomorrow.
Are we
They're
seeing
mostly-
Tuesday or Thursday?
I think it's Tuesday.
Okay. Just like
These
what-
are not, I mean, a lot of our questions have been answered already through our discussions and through some of the meetings that you've had. So mainly these things are around clarification and just additional information on, for example, enrollment figures and just some of the calculations on that, and mainly how assumptions have evolved and where they are with the most recent forecast. And then just making sure that I'm clear on details with regard to the excess cost grant and how you're calculating that. And again, my main interest is, we've looked at all these calculations and studies for years. I'm interested mostly in what assumptions have changed and why. And so
Okay.
just stay on top of that. But that's an example of some of the things that we're looking at. These should all be off the top of your head. I don't expect anything that's difficult that would suggest that we should delay that meeting from Tuesday. Following up on Tara's point about the lower healthcare costs for the Board of Ed, it's about $569,000. That actually takes our forecasted mill rate increase from 4.29% down to 3.86%, so a fair bit below 4%. If you have more of those that you'd like to, toss over our way, I mean, we're all ears, but we really
If
appreciate.
I can find them, I'm happy to deliver them.
Well, you have my number. So we're very appreciative of that, and like I said, our process is not finished, but I think to your point, that's good news for taxpayers. We just put through bonding sale for about $4.2 million. That closed on the 25th at 2.67%. Moody's and other bond rating agencies reaffirmed our AAA credit rating. This is for cafeteria, turf fields, cash deficit cleanups on a few projects, a few other things. But again, $4.2 million, certainly normal in the course of business that we would have that at this time. But we're still in a relatively favorable environment. But the most important thing is that we're able to go into these markets with an aggressive auction. People want to do business with us. They want to lend money to towns that have our type of financial profile. And as Jamie's talked about many times, having a well-managed town, everybody can say, well, geez, you guys have got a big grand list and all of that. The reality is that I think it's less about that, and it's more about spending within your means and being careful about all that. And I think every town official here is quite mindful of that, and that's where we are where we are. Oxridge Building Committee, we actually have a meeting tomorrow at 7:30 to go through that. They're in the process of selecting architects, and that's going along fairly quickly. We should have a much better visibility in terms of things to show people, in terms of where we are in the planning phase and when all this might kick off. But like I said, the big change in the process this year is we're not forecasting how much it's going to cost. We're actually going to take all of the design attributes that the Board of Education has specified. We're going to get somebody to come in and cost this out. So when we go to the RTM or have a discussion about this, it's a real number as opposed to a speculative number that then the real number is bigger and we end up with an under-designed building. So my big theme on the building committee is that we don't want to waste money. We're certainly not going to do that. But the end product that you see for Oxridge will not be an under-designed building, right? This will have the right capacity, the right size, the right capabilities, all the things we need for a 21st century school building, and we'll be able to deliver something to you that has those attributes. I've been very clear, I do not want to go back 3 years after this building is built and make hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of change because we were short-sighted on the design, so that's not going to happen. Anyway, I appreciate the detail that the Board of Education has provided. It's been very helpful for our discussions, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think we'll end up with something that everybody can be proud of, and if we can do it with the Public Works Garage theme of sooner than expected and under budget, that would be even better. And then I'm not going to talk more about this. I've said a lot publicly, but we remain concerned about what's going on at the state level. Terry will talk more about that.
Yeah.
And again, just to remind everybody, all this prudence and good management that we talk about, there's a potential for a tsunami that would come in and change things. So we just need to be mindful of that. That's it.
So I have questions regarding the financing of the Oxridge Elementary School.
We're going to borrow.
I know that there.
It's not going to be no cash and carry.
Correct. But we had some discussion at our Board of Selectmen meeting on the fate of school construction grants, certainly at the mercy of what's happening at the state in relation to debt diets and school construction being tied to efforts to regionalize services. My question really is more of a technical and mechanical one, and that is, it seems, and Terry, you could clarify this, that you have to, the process requires that you get local funding approvals before you can get state grant approvals, none of which can happen. You can't go get bids before those things happen. So it is we're actually working toward, as you just heard from John, a process that will allow for a better financial outcome, or at least a more authentic financial outcome locally. And I'm wondering, I am assuming that the Board of Finance and the Board of Education and the town will at some point talk about the challenges of applying for the state construction reimbursement grant, how much we're talking about on the table, if we do that, how long does that delay the actual project? Kip seemed very concerned about not really, I don't think we want to delay the project unless we have a thorough analysis of the cost benefits. of doing so?
Serendipitously, there was a man who contacted me who was a grant consultant, and I think he was at the meeting, the last meeting, which I'd missed, and came in and talked about the work that he does. But it really does take some specialized expertise to understand the not just the grant universe, but the nature of those grants and how they work, so that we can assess them and then go back and say, okay, well, this particular grant, the cost of that is this delay or this reconfiguration and all of
Yeah.
that, and make a thoughtful call or decision, obviously in collaboration with all of you, that says, okay, to get this grant, we have to do X or expect Y. Are you okay with that? And collectively make a decision on it.
Right.
So I think our job is to make sure we've got the best expertise and can present a holistic view across all of these grants for all of you to look at.
Mhm.
And then let's make a collective decision about which ones we want to pursue and quote pay the cost for, and others that we don't. But it's complicated in its evolving landscape.
So I think to John's point, when we talk, there's a couple different grants, right? So there's more than a couple, but there's a school construction grant, which we've
That's the
applied
biggest
for,
one, yeah.
and that's the biggest one.
Right.
And that is specific to what it applies for and what it doesn't. But there's also grants for security, and there are other smaller grants that I assume that the committee and the town will want to capitalize on. So it's a bit of a process. I mean, it's a real meandering.
Yep.
I don't always love consultants, and no one has asked me my opinion on this, but I can understand the interest in hearing from someone, because this is difficult to navigate this process. It's not.
I think he would pay for himself, since
Yes.
it's about getting, otherwise I would say no, but he seems competent. But he hasn't been engaged yet, and
Yeah.
we'll take that to you guys.
Wasn't there at one point, though, concern, one of the main areas of budget concern and cutting back was in grants for school construction?
Yes.
Is
that's-
that, is
yes.
that still,
Yes.
There is a and I mean, Jamie knows the bill as well. There are cuts to the school construction grant. There are also, as she mentioned, ideas that you are more or less eligible for a grant based on whether you do certain other activities. So this is, again, where a consultant would be good. Well, what are those activities? What's the threshold for those activities? But I think generally 20% is the maximum. At different school projects, we've gotten different amounts. I imagine it's a shifting scale all around in this particular financial climate.
Are there strings attached with these grants you get from the state? Like if you accept a grant, you have to do X, Y, and Z?
It works the other way, which is, I mean, John can speak to it too, in the sense that we have to prove full municipal funding to say that we could actually do this with local money. The grant kind of comes after the fact, and they only pay for certain things. So, if we wanted to build a helicopter pad on the top of our school, that's not going to apply to any grant application. So the specifications of what applies are specific. But John's
No,
done some
she's
more.
right. There's a list of grants that have got specific requirements, and then Tyra's right. What you do is you say, these are the grants that we want to pursue. We need to get our own ducks in a row in terms of architecture, committed funding, which then comes after all these things have been bid out. Once you have all of that, then you say, we could build this project without those grants, and then you simply apply for them. So to her point, they cover certain things, and we see if we can collect them. So, but again, I want to make sure that we have a holistic view of all these grants. The main one, to her point, is the school construction grant from the state. The rest of them, I think, are important, but if it's extremely painful or requires us to have either a significant delay or an undesirable reconfiguration of the school, I'm going to recommend we set them aside.
I guess I was just meaning that if there's a string attached, so to speak, that, there's a couple of charter schools they're building down in Stanford. There's a new one they just opened up. For argument's sake, say if they were over capacity by 10 kids,
Well,
can they say, hey, you guys take this grant, but you also have to take those 10 kids that can't fit into the school that's at...
Not
Well, then-
standalone.
No,
It's
yeah.
not, they would never do standalone. And it's all done through the Office of Policy and Management
Okay.
with very strict guidelines. Fair
Yeah.
question. And it's done ahead of time, so they would never do it behind,
Post.
after the fact.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And they're very thorough at Office of Policy and Management. They do a very good job of vetting the projects, and I coordinate with them often on projects. So,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, Terry.
Briefly, because I know we're coming down to the end here. It's a tough budget. There's no two ways about it. The regionalization of schools was a very hot topic, and There were 3 bills that dealt with that, 2 from Senator Stephen Looney and another one from the governor. The governor's bill has been rewritten. It's been modified. It's more or less an agreement with people. It's not forced. I understand the other 2 Senate bills have been taken off the table. They have had public hearings, and once something has had a public hearing, they could be put into an implementer or another piece of legislation. It doesn't mean they will, but it is a moving target. It is still moving, and we just don't know. What I have a strong suspicion will be thrown to the towns are phasing into the teachers' retirement pensions. I just have a sense. And the other is the statewide vehicle tax. So again, the budget process, we're still in the middle of public hearings for finance and appropriations. The report out dates are beginning of May for both committees, and after that we have a month with the leadership of both parties and the governor's office to work on this budget. We've got $2 billion deficit to figure out how we're going to address that, and people are rebelling against the proposed tax increases. So it's nonsensical. Yesterday, we were in session to vote on commissioners and also a union an arbitration. It wasn't a contract. An arbitration for the assistant attorneys general who were just allowed to collectively bargain. The contract guarantees $3 million increases over the next 3 years for department heads. Department heads get $6,000 in the first year, $12,000 in the second year, pay increases. And 48 days paid vacation a year, which every Democrat voted for it, but two in the House didn't.
So include the
So it's like if we're not going to address this situation with the very tight allegiance with our organized state union workers and the legislative Democrats, it's going to be very difficult to fix our fiscal situation. The other piece is David Lehman, who was a bit controversial, was voted in, was confirmed yesterday to be the commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development. I personally would have supported him. It didn't come to the House. It was a Senate vote. Very capable. He understands municipal finance. He's already done some very good deals. He went down to Bridgeport, toured Bridgeport for a full day with Marilyn Moore, the state senator there. She was very enthusiastic about him. I think he's a fresh face and a fresh voice on this, so I think that's a good thing. The rest of it, I will certainly keep you all apprised on where we go.
Thank you. Yes?
2 seconds. So if responsibility for the cost of the pension starts to move in our direction, does that have any impact on collective bargaining? Do we now get some say
That's
in,
to be determined.
do we get to,
I would hope.
bargain
Language
how
yet.
that?
There's no language yet.
I would
that
hope.
gives us that.
Right, but that's something that would
I
have
was
to be.
just asking on John's behalf.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think I don't know, it's so many moving pieces and so many voices on this. We just have to be aware that that's a possibility.
Okay, I'll go fast.
Look at me.
There's a lot of pieces of
I know, you
legislation
just happen to be there.
that if you're interested, I can tell you about. I do want to note that, and Tara, I'm sure, is aware of this, the Governor's Bill 874 establishes this Commission on Shared School Services, which is something that we'll want to watch because right now it convenes this commission and they're required to put forward recommendations, no mandates, but recommendations for the sharing of school services. So that sounds like a longer-term rollout of future potential school mandates. In addition to the regionalism bills, there is another bill that we've been watching closely, House Bill 7192, which it's sort of a grab bag of regionalism efforts. And one of the things that will be required, and I'm pretty sure this will go forward this year too, is the consolidation of public service answering points, dispatch centers. So before you leave, John, just tuck a note in the back of your mind that, it certainly is germane to our civilian dispatch investment. And the reason why we moved that forward is because we believe that civilianizing the dispatch would allow us to more seamlessly transition to a consolidated
Which is all going
dispatch
to be
center.
civilian anyway.
Yes, which would be civilianized anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
John.
John. Makes a couple other changes. It has been changed as of yesterday to remove the element that would have required tax collectors to become appointed rather than elected. And it also changed in not requiring the combining of assessment and collection departments within municipalities. But there are other things in that bill that still remain concerning, namely certain assessment and collection functions, data collection, data input functions are proposed to move to the COGS, with this very antiquated system of shipping paperwork to the COGS, having them do all this data entry, shipping the paperwork back for safe storage and keeping in an effort to create a regional database of some kind. I and a couple other chief elected officials and all of the directors of the COGS met with the Undersecretary Jonathan Harris to express our concern about that and to really elevate the conversation to, rather than sort of this nibbling around the edges of things that in fact will cost money, there's no one at WestCog that knows tax collecting and assessing. So we would need to hire a host of new employees in WestCog, even if it's just data entry, but you have to have capable people who know what they're doing when you're talking about inputting that kind of data. We elevated the conversation to talk about the real positive impact that statewide initiatives on using technology in general to help create digital town halls, digital municipal functions, and online services would be a very welcome initiative for OPM to undertake. But I don't believe any of those changes have made their way into this particular bill.
So you're just moving headcount. You're moving headcount from locally
Right.
to and then moving it back again.
Well, there would be no move back. And it sounds like it wouldn't, we don't have people here that just do data entry, so there would be no offsetting savings at the local level for
Right.
us in reality. We would just be manning up at WestCog,
Right.
and then the cost of that personnel enhancement would be shared through the member towns through our dues increase
So
or
you're
some other.
creating a county government.
And that is exactly what they're doing.
It's really creative.
They're just sort of veiling in all these,
Yeah, the
these,
slow
new, these
creep.
new words and
Yeah.
things. Tara, I wanted to ask you about House Bill 7350, which is this, I just learned about it, a bill that will require the RESCs to provide an inventory to you of all their goods and services, which I assume they do anyway, but to also provide to you a regional model for the provision of special education services. And I didn't know if you guys have talked about that at all.
So I only saw 7350 without language attached to it, so I have to go
Okay.
back and read it, and then I'm happy to get back to you on it.
Okay. I just didn't know if if it's something that we support, that if there's anything that's concerning in it.
I haven't seen support for regionalizing special education other than the ways that we already do, and part of that is actually explaining to the legislators what we already
Yeah.
do. That's part of the conversation that I think is missing.
Yeah.
I know Ridgefield, their brand new superintendent came out with this idea, and to my knowledge, and it's just anecdotal, most of the local superintendents were saying the model that he's proposing just doesn't work functionally.
Right.
But everything I have is anecdotal at this point, so I'm happy to read it and see if I can get some information.
I would agree that there's a deficit of understanding, and maybe it's because there's so many new people in Hartford, on what we actually do, how we do it, and all of the service sharing that already exists, both within and among boards of ed and between towns. Tolls, we can't forget about tolls. There are 3 bills that have advanced. One that directs, and this one's interesting, Terry, I'd love some more help understanding this, 7202. Allows for tolls and the revenue to be directed to a new Transportation Priority Projects account. That's not the Special Transportation Fund, from what I understand. And the reason why I raised the question is there's a federal lawsuits pending against, I think, in Pennsylvania for monies that were taken from the toll revenue and used for other transportation projects. And I'm concerned that that's what that means. So if you could help me learn that. Senate Bill 423 allows for 50 gantries and congestion pricing and tiers pricing based on what kind of car you drive, which I had never heard that before. That's interesting. And then one that really is quite important to watch, 7280, requires the development of a tolling plan that will be presented to the legislature. And if the legislature doesn't vote on it within 15 days of receiving the tolling plan, it will be deemed approved. Now,
Oh, boy.
There was a lot of language
That's
like
lovely.
that this year.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's approved by the planning and
Yes,
zoning's got
right.
that.
And, oh, we couldn't get to the vote.
And that
ridiculous.
that bill also creates
It's not
this
right.
new
Responsibility,
Right.
no accountability.
it also creates this new entity that's the
Right.
Transportation Finance Authority. So sort of moving the transportation finance functions, off the state roles and puts it into a separate finance authority. And this is really important for planning and zoning to follow this one. Again, it's 7280. The authority would be empowered to lease or acquire real property to implement infrastructure goals and would create an infrastructure bank to provide financial resources. This is the same sort of taking language that we saw last year, anything within a quarter mile of transit hubs, et cetera. I think this is where that concept is residing. So I'll just fly through a couple of other things. Yesterday, we introduced our Sustainable CT effort to some key staff members. And Craig Flaherty and Kathy Finnegan and their committee, the Sustainability Committee, is moving forward. We are attempting to see how many points we already have in the behaviors that we're already doing to potentially achieve bronze certification this year. I know they're going to be reaching out to Dr. Landon. He agreed to hear from them. So there will be a significant opportunity for the schools to participate in this initiative. 77 municipalities are participating. I think almost 30 have received certifications thus far. And from what I can tell, it's a wonderful way to evidence our town's commitment to sustainable communities. And it's sustainability well beyond recycling and changing your light bulbs to LEDs. It's your delivery of human service, it's housing, it's all the components that make a healthy and sustainable community in terms of actual projects and policy development. So I'm hoping for buy-in from everybody in town. Would actually love for a member of each board or commission to consider being a liaison to this group so that we can have a very well coordinated effort. I continue, Terry, to get complaints about the train horns on the New Canaan branch line. And I read an article yesterday, very hopeful. The Hartford line installed new technology called wayside horns for that very purpose, to reduce the noise pollution from the trains. So I've reached out to Carlo and Matt.
Nice.
And
They're on
would like to
transportation, both on transportation.
ask for your help in seeing if we can't give those folks some relief. It's a hideous quality of living
Yeah.
imposition.
They do
Agreed.
try early in the morning to ease up a little bit, but the
It's loud.
cars were not constructed with lightweight horns. You know, the ones they have, you've got to be very good, I think, to ease the sound.
So the wayside horns are actually at the grade crossings, and they're triggered, and they're positioned in a way that reduces sort of the ambient horn noise. It directs
Yeah.
it to the
All right.
cars that are near the grade crossings. So I really want to try and pursue that.
That was changed years ago for safety for the people at the tracks. Because I worked
Yes.
on 2 deals in
Yes.
Peekskill where that happened to them.
Yep. Oh, the grade crossing accidents
No,
have been,
you have to pull the horn
terrible.
within a half a mile or a mile of the station twice.
yes, but
I
if
don't know
you,
who does the law.
and there's certain pattern, but if you hear, there are so many grade crossings on the New Canaan branch line that
Speaking
they're
of-
literally blowing their horn from the Merritt Parkway to Glenbrook.
Right.
Literally.
Speaking where I am, I get Glenbrook, and then I can listen, I get Springdale, Talmadge Hill. It goes right on continuous.
Yeah. The good news is I think that
I
Matt
get
is
Talmadge
somewhat
Hill.
impacted by that noise, so
I'm pretty fine
he
with
was, had an empathetic ear.
Great, I'm happy to work with both of them on this.
Great. You mentioned Boxcar, which is the parking app. We also are talking to them to see if there's a way that they can help the municipality. And it's a really interesting model. It sort of takes government out of it and connects Boxcar with local property owners who might have excess parking.
Just be
And
careful when you go with local property owners. Because it's relative to something like Good Drive Shopping Center.
yeah,
That you're over capacity.
and that's why zoning needs to be included in the conversation. And they have already come to you and have gotten certain approvals to look at certain private properties. Churches come to mind that are very good examples
Right.
of places that are generally underparked 6 out of the 7 days of the week. Norotan Heights train station design development is moving forward. We continue to have some, along the lines of re-education, trying to get the Connecticut DOT to remember the concept that the town of Darien is willing to financially participate significantly in the upgrades. So we have to keep engaging them, and they do have people at the table.
They don't believe you.
I think they don't. Old Town Hall Homes, you can see that it's
Yeah.
been demolished. An unintended consequence of that development, which we learned very recently, unfortunately, is that we need to temporarily relocate our in-town paramedics.
I don't know that.
Yes, because of the entrance and exit, the construction entrance and exit. So we are working on a plan to do just that, and we should hopefully have something in the next 2 weeks organized. Norotan and West intersection is in the process of design development. That project, along with the signal enhancements and roadway alignment changes at Norotan and Ledge, are both going to be funded primarily through the local transportation capital improvement program, which is state funding managed through WestCog. So we have been approved. We've gotten commitments to fund from WestCog for both of those intersection projects. West and Norotan will happen first.
So if someone takes the lead on that one, do they go to Palmer's do they go to Federal for a check because they're taking out 12 feet at Chase Bank? At the corner of is it Road Avenue? No, Heights Road
Heights
and Road Avenue.
So are you talking about the permanent easements?
Well, as part of the federal application, they're taking out 12 feet and adding a turning lane, which is now grass on Chase Bank.
So that's actually a third project. They are related but not contiguous. The town of Darien is changing the signaling
Right.
and creating turn lanes at the intersection of Norotan and West.
Right.
And we're doing the same thing at the intersection of Norotan and Ledge.
Correct.
The piece of roadway that you're talking about that's associated with the Federal Realty development is not part of the town's project scope, but they are all interrelated.
Okay. I just.
They won't happen at the same time. The federal piece of that project won't actually happen until federal decides to start the
Correct.
redevelopment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right.
I would have figured they would have coordinated.
Right. Blight. We are now at the point where we have 3 very problematic blight situations, and we will be going back to the RTM with suggested modifications to the blight ordinance. We've learned a lot in the process. And I'm going to save my last question because it's kind of a big one for you, Steve. There's been a lot of
Drum roll.
conversation over the years, and in particular, this legislative session over zoning barriers to entry for towns like Darien. I would like to know if we have ever done or would ever consider doing a review of our zoning regulations to understand more in depth if those barriers actually exist and where they might exist and what we can do to either make appropriate modifications if that's within our power, or to evidence the fact that those barriers in fact don't exist. So I don't know enough, and I'm asking for your consideration and that of your commission to take that on as a long-term study issue.
Sure.
Okay.
No problem.
That's it for me. We have some minutes of February 28th. So Tara was here. I think it's just you and me and Seth. So I think we can vote on these. Great. So
I would, I meant to bring just one quick one for you. We are doing, I don't like the name, but it's the name we've inherited, shooter training.
Active shooter training.
Active shooter training, and that's going to be, it's being done at the Darien Police Station for members of the representative town meeting who are interested in having that.
yeah. So that the news of that available training has made its way to other members of other boards and commissions, some of whom have expressed interest in also having access to that training. So I'm going to try and work with the chief and Donna to see if there's any open spaces in the sessions that are already planned.
Very ably handled between the chief and Donna.
Great.
Done a great job.
Perfect. Okay, so if there are any corrections or additions to the minutes of February 28th, please let me know. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Tara, may I have a second from Seth?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Terrific. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seth, may I have a second?
Second.
Steve, thank you very much.